You need to know this. The third Democratic presidential debate and the first debate of the year was held in Georgetown, New Hampshire on Saturday evening. Just one day before the debate, the Bernie Sanders campaign sued the Democratic National Committee because the DNC had blocked the Sanders campaign from accessing any of its voter data. By the time the debate rolled around, the DNC had yielded and given the Sanders campaign access to its records again. The issue was quickly put to rest in the first minutes of Saturday's debate with an apology from Bernie Sanders and a call for an independent investigation into the matter. The debate moved on from there, with Bernie Sanders criticizing Hillary Clinton's policy positions, but the two candidates also frequently agreed about the fact that the Republicans, and especially Donald Trump, are causing more problems than they're solving. Take a look as both Clinton and Sanders agree that Trump is way off base about terrorism and Muslims in America.
And we also need to make sure that the really discriminatory messages that Trump is sending around the world don't fall on receptive ears. He is becoming ISIS's best recruiter.
The Secretary is right. Our people are fearful. They are anxious on a number of levels. They are anxious about international terrorism and the possibility of another attack in America. We all understand that. But you know what else they're anxious about? They're anxious about the fact that they are working incredibly long hours. They're worried about their kids, and they're seeing all the new income and wealth, virtually all of it, going to the top 1%. And somebody like a Trump comes along and says, I know the answers. The answer is that all of the Mexicans, they're criminals and rapists. We got to hate the Mexicans. Those are your enemies. We hate all the Muslims because all of the Muslims are terrorists. We got to hate the Muslims. Meanwhile, the rich get richer.
But it's not just Trump, because Trump's become the pace setter for the entire Republican field. And that was the real takeaway from Saturday's debate. There are big differences between Clinton's Third Way platform and Bernie's FDR platform, but either platform would be leaps and bounds better for America and the world than any of the set of extremist ideas that the Republicans have put forward. Here now to discuss Saturday's debate, what we learned and what we can expect in the last 5 weeks before the Iowa caucuses is Richard Eskow, writer and editor for the Bernie Sanders campaign and host of the Zero Hour with R.J. Eskow. Hey, welcome back, Richard.
Always great to be here, Tom.
Thank you. It's always great to see you. First, before we get into the Democratic debate, a Trump supporter was arrested yesterday for building bombs in his house and threatening Muslims. Presumably, he was planning on killing Muslims with the bombs. By Trump's own logic, is it time to ask his supporters to start monitoring and reporting each other?
By Trump's own logic, it's time to start registering Trump supporters in a national database. Fortunately, you and I don't think that way, but that's what happens when you go down the road of totalitarian thinking. It eventually turns around and bites you in the back. I think it's time for the Republican Party to repudiate not only what Trump has had to say, but what a number of the other candidates have had to say about religious tests for admitting refugees and all sorts of other hateful speech. It just goes to show you how dangerous this kind of talk is and how dangerous it is when one of two parties in a two-party system condones it by allowing it to continue.
Yeah, maybe we should have a travel ban on all Trump supporters. What were your initial thoughts on the debate last night? What stood out for you?
Well, for me, first of all, and I don't just say this because I'm a Bernie guy, I thought Bernie did terrifically well. I thought he was even stronger now than he's been in the past. It was clear to me, as I think it was clear to you and a lot of folks watching, that it's night and day to watch the Democrats debate than to watch the Republicans debate. There are legitimate and major differences of opinion between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, but as you said, you know, they're not even in the same ballpark as the Republicans, any one of whom would be catastrophic for the country if they became president.
Yeah. What do you think it says that the candidates spent, both Bernie and Hillary, a lot of time, and that other guy, I can't remember his name, spent a lot of the time targeting Republicans and Donald Trump? How did this debate differ from the Republican debate so far?
Well, I think, first of all, again, on substance, but secondly, I think that, you could say strategically, both Sanders and Clinton were using this as an opportunity to show the voters how they would run against the Democrats against the Republicans, should they be the nominee. So in a sense, it was a dress rehearsal for both Bernie and Hillary, and personally, I think Bernie did a fantastic job in that regard. I think Hillary did well too, but I think Bernie's point about how totalitarian thinking like Trump's comes along when people are financially insecure and frightened. Thom, you're a student of history. You know very well that that is the historical pattern. When there's financial insecurity, people turn to strongmen type leaders and totalitarian type leaders. I think that was a great example of the kind of rhetoric we need to deploy against the Republicans next year.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm curious your thoughts. In fact, let me frame it as sort of a joke, but it's really not. If a debate falls on the last Saturday shopping night before Christmas, when the first big NFL game is being played, and Star Wars is having its opening weekend, does it make any sound?
Well, or I thought you were going to end as Debbie Wasserman Schultz keep her job. Look, I don't speak for the campaign officially or any of those types of things. I'm not a spokesperson. But I will tell you just on a personal level, there's no question that this looks and feels very much like greasing the skids for one of the candidates at the expense of the others. And I think any Democrat who really and sincerely, and I think that's most Democrats, is frightened of a Republican presidency in 2017 should deplore that behavior, not only because it's wrong and unfair, but because it's going to alienate just the voters that Democrats are going to need to win over to win in 2016. If Democrats come across looking like they didn't run a clean primary process. After all, Democratic is in the name of the party. If they don't look like they did it in a democratic way, they're going to alienate the electorate. And I think now, today, is the time for the Democratic Party to look at how this process has worked going forward and what they can do to improve both the appearance and the substance of fairness from this moment forward.
Yeah. A lot of the debate showcased why Hillary or Bernie would be better for America than any Republican, but they did disagree. Check this out, their different views on education in America.
So I think we need radical changes in the funding of higher education. We should look at college today the way high school was looked at 60 years ago. All young people who have the ability should be able to get a college education.
I don't believe in free tuition for everybody. I believe we should focus on middle-class families, working families, and poor kids who have the ambition and the talent to go to college and get ahead.
So what are your thoughts on that difference? Should we start kicking rich kids out of high school because their parents can afford to send them to prep school?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, I think, look, we've had free high school education in this country for many, many years, and we have it because we understand that young people do better and the whole society, the whole economy, and the democratic society do better when everybody is educated. We've now reached a point in our history where college education is roughly equivalent to what a high school education was in terms of employability, in terms of participating in the democratic process, and so on. So we should use exactly the same logic. It should be available to everyone. You know, Hillary had the cute line last time around that I don't want to give free college education to Donald Trump's kids. Well, you won't, because they'll go to private schools if they go to college. So this should be about something that's accessible to everyone. That's how our best programs work, Thom. That's how Medicare works. It's available to everyone. That's how Social Security works. That's how higher education should work.
Yeah, absolutely. What else or where else were there these kinds of sharp disagreements between Clinton and Sanders?
Well, I think one of the most striking exchanges on Saturday night was when Secretary Clinton said that she would not raise taxes by a penny on the middle class. And I think what that tells us is a couple things. One, it's a Republican soundbite that's worked well in the past, but if that had been the Democratic soundbite in the 1930s, we would have no Social Security program today. If it had been the Democratic soundbite in the 1960s, we would have no Medicare program today. By doing that, she shuts off Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's excellent Family and Medical Leave Act from ever becoming law for what would come out to an average of about $1.91 per week. So I think we've got to. She also used it to attack the Medicare for All program by saying it would raise taxes on the middle class without pointing out that it would raise taxes on the average middle class family in a way that they would save $5,000 to $7,000 a year, which is a deal anybody would take. So apparently she'd rather have $12,000 go to private health corporations than have a much smaller amount go to help everybody get health insurance. So, again, I think this was an ideological difference that's pronounced and that needs to be discussed in the coming weeks.
Very, very well said. Richard Eskow, great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much.
Great to see you.
Coming up,